Benjamin Franklin was born in Boston, Massachusetts on January 17, 1706. He was the 10th son of a soap and candle maker named Josiah Franklin. His family was quite large, with 17 children in total. From a very young age, Benjamin showed a remarkable curiosity. He just loved to read everything he could get his hands on. His father had hoped he would become a clergyman, but the cost of formal education was just too high for such a large family. So young Ben's formal schooling ended when he was only 10 years old. This, however, did not stop his quest for knowledge. He became a lifelong learner, teaching himself through books and observation. His love for the water was almost as strong as his love for books. As a boy, he was a powerful swimmer and even invented a set of wooden paddles for his hands and feet to help him swim faster. At the age of 12, Benjamin was apprenticed to his older brother James, who was a printer. This was a pivotal moment in his life. Working in the print shop gave him access to a world of books and ideas that he might not have otherwise encountered. He spent his spare money on books, often staying up late into the night to read them. He studied arithmetic, navigation, and grammar on his own. He also began to write. Wanting to prove his skill, he secretly wrote letters under the pseudonym Silence Do Good, a witty middle-aged widow, and slipped them under the door of his brother's newspaper, the New England Courant. The letters were a huge hit with readers. The success of Silence Do Good gave Benjamin confidence, but it also created tension with his brother. The relationship between the brothers grew strained. Benjamin felt trapped and yearned for freedom. The apprenticeship was supposed to last until he was 21, but Benjamin decided he just couldn't wait that long. In 1723, at the age of 17, he made a bold decision. He ran away from Boston, breaking his legal contract and setting out on a journey that would change his life and, eventually, the course of American history. Benjamin Franklin arrived in Philadelphia with very little money in his pocket. He was a runaway, a stranger in a new city. His first appearance in the city has become a famous American story. He was tired, hungry, and disheveled. He bought 3 large puffy rolls of bread from a baker and walked down Market Street with a roll under each arm while eating the third. A young woman named Deborah Reed saw him and thought he looked rather ridiculous. She had no idea that this comical-looking young man would one day become her husband and one of the most famous men in the world. This humble beginning was a testament to his resilience and determination. Despite his rough start, Franklin quickly found work as a printer. His skills were in demand, and his work ethic was strong. He was diligent and frugal, saving his money and working hard to establish himself. He caught the attention of Pennsylvania's governor, Sir William Keith, who was impressed by the young man's intelligence and ambition. The governor promised to help Franklin set up his own print shop, even offering to send him to London to purchase the necessary equipment. The trip to London, however, did not go as planned. The letters of credit from Governor Keith never arrived. Franklin found himself stranded in a foreign city with no financial backing. It was a harsh lesson in trust and self-reliance. But Franklin did not despair. He found work in London's famous print shops where he honed his skills and learned new techniques. He spent 18 months in the city, absorbing its culture and making new friends. He turned a moment of betrayal into an opportunity for growth and learning. He learned that he could only truly depend on himself to achieve his goals. Upon returning to Philadelphia in 1726, Franklin was more determined than ever. He went back to work as a printer's clerk and eventually, with a partner, bought the Pennsylvania Gazette. He transformed the newspaper into the most successful publication in the colonies. It was filled with witty articles, advertisements, and news that people wanted to read. He was not just a printer, he was a talented writer and a shrewd businessman. His success was built on hard work, cleverness, and a deep understanding of what interested the public. He was on his way to becoming one of Philadelphia's most prominent citizens.
Benjamin Franklin understood that personal success was intertwined with the success of the community. In 1727, he gathered a group of like-minded friends, mostly artisans and tradesmen, to form a club called the Junto. It was a club for mutual improvement. The members met every Friday evening to discuss topics of morals, politics, or natural philosophy. They shared knowledge, debated ideas, and helped each other in their businesses. The Junto was a place where ordinary men could educate themselves and each other. It was a network of ambitious young men who wanted to make a difference in their city. The discussions in the Junto often led to practical projects for the public good. One of the first and most lasting of these projects was the creation of a subscription library. At the time, books were expensive and rare in the colonies. Only the wealthy could afford to have their own private libraries. Franklin proposed that the junto members pool their money to buy books that they could all share. This idea grew into the Library Company of Philadelphia, founded in 1731. It was America's first lending library. For a small fee, subscribers could borrow books on a wide range of subjects. The Library Company was a revolutionary idea. It made knowledge accessible to people who were not wealthy. It allowed tradesmen, clerks, and artisans to educate themselves and improve their station in life. Franklin believed that an informed citizenry was essential for a healthy society. The library was a tangible expression of this belief. It helped to foster a culture of learning and inquiry in Philadelphia, making it a center of intellectual life in the colonies. The success of the library inspired other towns and cities to create their own, spreading the light of knowledge across America. The junto and the Library Company were just the beginning of Franklin's efforts to improve his community. These early projects showed his unique ability to turn ideas into action. He was not just a thinker, he was a doer. He saw a need and immediately started organizing people and resources to address it. This combination of vision and practical execution was one of his greatest strengths. He was building more than just a successful business, he was building a better city, one institution at a time. His work laid the foundation for a more educated and engaged public.
In 1732, Benjamin Franklin began publishing one of his most famous and enduring works, Poor Richard's Almanac. Almanacs were very popular in the 18th century. They were calendars that included weather forecasts, astronomical information, poems, and puzzles. Nearly every household had one. Franklin saw an opportunity to create an almanac that was not only useful, but also entertaining and educational. He created the fictional character of Poor Richard Saunders, a humble, stargazing man who offered witty sayings and practical advice to his readers. The almanac was an instant success. Under the guise of Poor Richard, Franklin filled the pages of his almanac with proverbs and aphorisms that promoted thrift, hard work, and good sense. Sayings like, "A penny saved is a penny earned," "Early to bed and early to rise," "Makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise," and "God helps them that help themselves" became part of the American vocabulary. These were not just clever phrases, they were simple, memorable lessons for living a virtuous and successful life. They resonated with the values of the common people, offering them a philosophy of self-improvement and practical wisdom. Poor Richard's Almanac sold about 10,000 copies a year, making it a colonial bestseller. It made Franklin a wealthy man and a household name throughout the American colonies and even in Europe. The almanac was a powerful tool for shaping public opinion and culture. Franklin used it to subtly educate his readers, promoting his own values of industry and civic virtue. He was, in essence, a teacher to the entire colonial population. He understood that humor and wit were more effective than a dry lecture for conveying important ideas. The success of the almanac allowed Franklin to retire from the daily operations of his printing business in 1748, at the age of just 42. He was now financially independent and could devote himself entirely to his other passions, science, invention, and public service. Poor Richard's Almanac was more than just a profitable business venture. It was a reflection of Franklin's own journey from a poor runaway apprentice to a successful and respected citizen. It was a practical guide that showed others how they too could achieve success through hard work and good character. It helped to define the American dream. With his newfound leisure time after retiring from printing, Benjamin Franklin turned his full attention to scientific investigation. He was, really fascinated by electricity, which was a mysterious and poorly understood phenomenon at the time. He conducted a series of groundbreaking experiments, corresponding with scientists across the Atlantic to share his findings. Franklin proposed that electricity was a single fluid, with positive and negative charges, a concept that is still fundamental to our understanding of it today. He wasn't a trained scientist in a university, but his brilliant mind and methodical experiments placed him right at the forefront of the field. His most famous experiment involved a kite, a key, and a thunderstorm. In 1752, he set out to prove his theory that lightning was a form of electricity. So, he flew a kite with a metal key attached to the string during a storm. As the storm cloud passed overhead, he noticed that loose threads on the kite string stood on end, and when he brought his knuckle close to the key, a spark jumped between them. This dangerous experiment proved his hypothesis. He had shown that the awesome power of lightning was the same natural force that could be generated in a laboratory. It was, honestly, a monumental discovery. This discovery was not just a scientific curiosity for Franklin, it had a practical application. He used his new knowledge to invent the lightning rod. This was a simple but ingenious device, a pointed metal rod attached to the highest point of a building, connected to a wire that ran down to the ground. The rod would attract the electrical charge from a lightning strike and safely conduct it into the earth, preventing fires and destruction. The lightning rod was one of the first inventions to come directly from pure scientific research. It saved countless lives and properties and made Franklin world famous. Beyond the lightning rod, Franklin's inventive mind was always at work. He invented bifocal glasses because he was tired of switching between two pairs of spectacles for reading and for seeing at a distance. He simply had the lenses cut in half and put them together in a single frame. He also designed a more efficient wood-burning stove, known as the Franklin stove, which produced more heat with less smoke and used less fuel. These inventions were not for profit. He never patented them. Franklin believed that his inventions should be shared freely to benefit everyone. They were products of his desire to use knowledge to make life better for all people. Benjamin Franklin's contributions to Philadelphia went far beyond his business and scientific achievements. He was deeply committed to improving the city where he had found his success. Franklin was a master of organizing people to work together for the common good. Whenever he saw a problem, his first instinct was to create an organization to solve it. In 1736, recognizing the constant threat of fire in a city of wooden buildings, he organized Philadelphia's first volunteer fire company, the Union Fire Company. This was, honestly, a model of cooperation, where members pledged to help each other in case of a fire. His civic projects just kept multiplying. He was concerned about the poor state of law enforcement in the city, so he proposed a plan for a city watch, or police force. He noticed that the city streets were unpaved, muddy and dark, so he led a campaign to have them paved and to install streetlights. He even organized a system for street sweeping. Franklin believed that a clean, safe and well-lit city would be better for business and for the quality of life of all its citizens. He had this vision of a modern, well-ordered city and worked tirelessly to make it a reality. Franklin also turned his attention to health and education. He was instrumental in founding the Pennsylvania Hospital in 1751, which was the first public hospital in the American colonies. He raised money for it through a clever matching grant scheme, persuading both the public and the Pennsylvania Assembly to contribute. He also helped to establish the Academy of Philadelphia, which would later grow into the University of Pennsylvania. His goal was to create an institution that would provide a practical education for young men, focusing on skills that would be useful in their careers, rather than just the classical education offered at older universities. Through all these initiatives, Franklin demonstrated a new kind of citizenship. He wasn't a government official in these early years, but a private citizen who took responsibility for the well-being of his community. He showed that ordinary people could come together to solve public problems without waiting for the government to act. Franklin's work transformed Philadelphia into one of the most advanced and enlightened cities in the British Empire. He was building a society based on cooperation, self-reliance, and a commitment to the public good, ideals that would later become central to the new American nation. As the American colonies grew, they faced increasing threats, especially from the French and their Native American allies on the western frontier. The colonies were, honestly, pretty independent of one another, each with its own government and its own interests. They rarely cooperated, even when it came to matters of mutual defense. In 1754, as tensions that would lead to the French and Indian War were rising, representatives from several colonies gathered in Albany, New York, to discuss a more unified approach. Benjamin Franklin was one of the delegates from Pennsylvania, and he arrived with a bold idea. Franklin presented what became known as the Albany Plan of Union, a proposal for a permanent, unified government for the colonies. Under his plan, there would be a President General appointed by the British King, and a Grand Council with representatives chosen by the colonial assemblies. This new intercolonial government would have the power to manage relations with Native American tribes, control westward expansion, and most importantly, raise an army, and levy taxes for the common defense of all the colonies. It was a pretty radical idea for its time, a vision of the colonies acting as a single, united entity. To promote his plan, Franklin published a famous political cartoon in his newspaper, the Pennsylvania Gazette. It showed a snake cut into several pieces, with each piece labeled with the initials of a colony. Below the snake were the words, "Join or die." The message was clear and powerful. Unless the colonies united, they would be defeated one by one. The cartoon was the first of its kind in America, and it was widely reprinted, becoming a potent symbol of colonial unity. It really showed Franklin's genius for using media to communicate a complex political idea in a simple, compelling way. Despite Franklin's eloquent arguments and the urgency of the situation, the Albany Plan was ultimately rejected. The colonial assemblies just weren't ready to give up their individual powers to a central government. The British government also disapproved, fearing that a united colonial government would be too powerful and hard to control. The plan was a failure in the short term, but it was a crucial first step on the road to American unity. It was the first time a detailed plan for colonial union had been seriously debated. The ideas Franklin put forward in 1754 would be revisited 2 decades later, during the American Revolution. In 1757, Benjamin Franklin's life took another significant turn. He was sent to London by the Pennsylvania Assembly to act as its agent. His mission was to negotiate a long-standing dispute with the Penn family, the proprietors who owned and governed the colony. The Assembly believed that the Penns, who were immensely wealthy from their vast land holdings, were not paying their fair share of taxes for the defense of the colony during the French and Indian War. Franklin was tasked with persuading the British government to force the proprietors to contribute to the public good. It was honestly a difficult and delicate diplomatic task. Franklin arrived in London as a celebrated figure. His scientific achievements, especially his work with electricity and the invention of the lightning rod, had made him famous throughout Europe. He was welcomed into the highest intellectual circles, becoming a member of the prestigious Royal Society and receiving honorary degrees from Oxford and St. Andrews. He spent his days meeting with influential politicians, scientists, and thinkers. Franklin charmed them with his wit, his wisdom, and his uniquely American character. He really was a living embodiment of the potential of the New World. His mission on behalf of Pennsylvania turned out to be a long and frustrating one. The legal and political processes were slow, and the Penn family had powerful friends in the British government. Franklin spent 5 years in London on this first trip, patiently arguing Pennsylvania's case. He wrote pamphlets and articles to win public support for his cause. He learned the intricate workings of the British political system, making valuable contacts and gaining a deep understanding of the relationship between Britain and its American colonies. Franklin became a skilled and respected diplomat, representing not just Pennsylvania, but the interests of America more broadly. Ultimately, Franklin was successful. In 1760, he managed to secure a compromise that required the Penn family's lands to be taxed, a major victory for the Pennsylvania Assembly. His success really enhanced his reputation as a formidable political operator. His time in London was transformative. It gave him a new perspective on the British Empire and America's place within it. He came to see that there were deep misunderstandings and growing tensions between the mother country and its colonies. This experience was crucial in shaping him into the diplomat who would later represent America on the world stage during the Revolution. Benjamin Franklin returned to Philadelphia in 1762, but his time at home was brief. The political climate was becoming increasingly tense. Britain, heavily in debt from the French and Indian War, began to impose new taxes on the American colonies to raise revenue. The Sugar Act of 1764 and the Stamp Act of 1765 were met with widespread protest in America. The colonists argued that Britain had no right to tax them without their consent, since they had no elected representatives in the British Parliament. The famous slogan, "No taxation without representation," became the rallying cry of the opposition. In 1764, Franklin was sent back to London, this time as an agent for several colonies. His role was to protest the Stamp Act and other unpopular British policies. He initially hoped for a reconciliation. Franklin loved the British Empire and believed that the colonies could remain a loyal and prosperous part of it. He worked tirelessly to explain the American position to British politicians, arguing that cooperation and mutual respect were better than coercion and taxation. He was a voice of moderation, seeking a peaceful resolution to the growing conflict. A key moment came in 1766 when Franklin was called to testify before the British Parliament. He was questioned for hours about the situation in America. His performance was brilliant, Franklin calmly and clearly explained why the colonists opposed the Stamp Act, warning that the use of force to collect the tax could lead to rebellion. His testimony was a public relations masterpiece. It was printed and widely read on both sides of the Atlantic. It played a significant role in persuading Parliament to repeal the Stamp Act later that year. Franklin was hailed as a hero in America. However, the repeal of the Stamp Act did not end the conflict. The British government continued to assert its right to tax the colonies, leading to more protests and escalating tensions. Over the next decade, Franklin's optimism for reconciliation slowly faded. He witnessed the arrogance and ignorance of many British leaders regarding America. He came to believe that the colony's interests would never be truly respected within the British Empire. By the time he sailed for home in 1775, the first shots of the Revolution had been fired at Lexington and Concord. The printer, scientist, inventor, and diplomat had become a revolutionary, ready to help create a new nation. His long pre-revolutionary career had perfectly prepared him for this final great chapter of his life.